Dior is one of the most popular luxury fashion brands on the planet. Founded in 1946, the company has been a staple of the fashion world and the epitome of elegance for 77 years. However, while millions know the name of Dior, many don't know the captivating story of its creation. And the story of the invention of Dior is the tale of Christian Dior, a designer, innovator, and businessman who, though the son of a fertilizer manufacturer, changed the world of fashion forever. Before Christian Dior started what would become the billion-dollar fashion brand, he was born in 1905 in Normandy on the north shores of France. Christian didn't spend much of his childhood in the country, as his family soon moved to the country's capital city, Paris. During his upbringing, Christian's father worked as an extremely successful fertilizer manufacturer, and their family of 7 was more than comfortable. In fact, they were considered quite wealthy. Christian was extremely creative as a young boy, and whether it was due to the fact that Christian's adolescence was sheltered or it was an inevitable aspect of his personality, he was always able to explore his ideas and hobbies. In his early years, young Dior spent most of his time picking flowers, drawing, and painting. And when he was able to form dreams of the future, he decided he wanted to be an architect. However, Christian's father was resolute that his son would become a diplomat, not a starving artist. And although Christian had no interest in diplomacy, he followed his father's advice and enrolled in the École des Sciences Politiques to earn his degree in political science. Although he finished his degree, Christian never used his studies but immediately returned to what he truly loved: art. He was selling sketches on the streets of Paris for pocket money, and along with financial aid from his father, he opened a small art gallery. At the gallery, which was not named Dior as per his father's request, Christian sold pieces by now incredibly famous artists such as Pablo Picasso. And although he found success at the gallery, unfortunately in 1931, his father's business was struggling due to repercussions of the Great Depression, and Christian was forced to close up shop. Very sadly, at this time, Christian's mother and brother also passed away. So, in addition to the financial difficulties his family was facing, he was also grieving the incredible loss. These hardships led to illness, and Christian contracted tuberculosis at the young age of 27, leaving him almost bedridden for close to a year. Luckily, he finally did recover, but then he desperately needed to find a way to make money. Christian Dior's first foray into fashion was extremely humble. While he was almost always sketching something, he began to draw designs for women's wardrobes, including dresses, coats, and hats. He sold many of these designs on the street and to local newspapers for as little as 10 cents a sketch. And although these meager earnings were not enough to live on, they proved to be much more valuable than Christian could have ever imagined. In fact, they actually paved the way for Christian to become the incredibly famous designer he was destined to be, as after a designer saw them, he was hired for his first job in the fashion industry. The designer's name was Robert Piquet, and though born in Switzerland, he had made quite the name for himself in Paris with his stylish and tasteful creations. Of course, Piquet is still known in his own right as an impeccable designer, but because of Christian Dior's immense success, many remember him only as the man who gave Dior his big break. Christian worked for Piquet for several years, and during this time, he learned a great deal about the trade. In fact, Dior famously said, "Robert Piquet taught me the virtues of simplicity, through which true elegance must come." In 1940, Christian left his job with Piquet to serve in the French military during World War II, though by all accounts, he did not stay for the duration of the war and returned as quickly as possible to Paris to continue his career in fashion. Upon his arrival in 1942, he got a new job, this time with designer and manufacturer Lucien Long. Dior worked alongside Pierre Balmain as the head designer for the company and found success creating gowns and other fashionable couture outfits for French aristocrats and even Nazi wives. Christian only worked with Lucien Long for 5 years, and in 1947, he decided it was time to go out on his own. In 1946, cotton manufacturer Marcel Boussac contacted Christian in the hopes of onboarding the designer to work for him and revive his dying company. However, Dior decided that at a point in his career, he no longer wanted to work under someone else's name. He proposed to Boussac that he invest his money in Dior's name and the fashion brand he had not yet begun. And surprisingly, Boussac agreed. At 41 years old, Christian Dior finally opened his own shop at 30 Avenue Montaigne in Paris on December 16, 1946. While many consider this the beginning of the House of Dior, others argue that Dior only truly began when Christian released his first collection the next year. The opening of the store was just the beginning. Christian began working tirelessly to create the initial collection, and his creative and innovative mind could finally shine. In the years leading up to 1947, women's fashion was practical. Of course, it was a time of war, and excessive creativity was considered a luxury. But Christian decided to break the mold and create designs that were whimsical and elegant, as opposed to sensible. In less than 3 months, Christian created a revolutionary collection of garments that, at the time, were considered quite avant-garde, with shorter, calf-length skirts that were full-bodied and cinched at the waist. The luxurious dresses used almost 20 yards of fabric, and while they were considered quite elaborate, they were also beloved and were quickly named the New Look. The feminine Corolla collection, named after one of Christian's favorite flowers, was widely received as an immediate success. However, there was one famous review that will never be forgotten, that of Coco Chanel herself. She argued that a man quite clearly made the designs as they meant to bring women backwards in time, not forward. Her focus on modern pantsuits was said to be more based on feminism, as they allowed women to move more freely than in the cumbersome dresses Dior had created. Many agreed with Chanel, including those in the United States, and in fact, his work was not well received by the modern American woman, and he was scorned when he arrived in the States that very year. But luckily, those who did not appreciate his designs were not the majority, and his popularity, especially in France, began to grow. It's important to understand that Christian truly believed he was celebrating the feminine beauty in his intricate creations, and most women who wore his designs felt the very same feeling. Even with his apparent lack of success in the United States, Dior decided that the way forward for his company was to open a store in New York City. Along with his trademark New Look designs, he also created his first fragrance, Miss Dior. While he dedicated the perfume to his younger sister, Catherine, the idea being its creation was to encapsulate the feeling of his art in the perfect scent. During these initial years in New York, the gorgeous haute couture dresses, a fabulous perfume, and more accessories being designed and manufactured, Dior became much more than just a store. It was an experience, and everyone wanted to be a part of it. Famous actresses, singers, socialites, and even European royalty were lining up to wear Dior. And with the designer's dresses, gloves, shoes, scents, jewelry, and hats adorning the world's elite, Christian had finally achieved complete and utter success in the industry. While Christian was enjoying his success and working constantly to create new and innovative looks, an important person came into his life, Yves Saint Laurent. In 1955, when Dior was 50 years old, Yves Saint Laurent was only 19. The young soon-to-be designer became Dior's assistant and soon his confidant and second in command. It came as a surprise to all when Dior named Saint Laurent his successor. However, as the artist was only 50, no one believed it would come to fruition in the near future. However, only 2 years later, Christian Dior passed away in Italy from a heart attack. And although it was a great loss to the fashion industry and the world, Yves Saint Laurent took his new position as artistic director in stride. He began creating pieces that held true to Dior's original concept, but with his own modern twist. Many of his collections were considered a great success. However, overall, Yves Saint Laurent was not respected as much as Dior, and the company suffered from it. Yves Saint Laurent was drafted in 1960, and another designer, Marc Bohan, took his place as director. According to the company's board and employees, Bohan was far more successful in taking the creativity of Christian Dior and modernizing the designs. Much of today's iconic Dior shapes were created by Bohan. and many say that he saved the brand from collapse by bringing it into the new world of feminine fashion. And Bohan's beloved designs allowed the company to expand all over the world. By the beginning of the 1970s, Dior had opened stores on every continent and was a household name when it came to luxury, ready-to-wear fashion. Although Mark Bohan stayed on at Dior as the artistic director for another 2 decades, Dior was sold in 1978 to new management. Essentially, the Boussac Group had gone bankrupt, and although Dior was incredibly successful, as one of the group's assets, it was sold to the lowest bidder. Bernard Arnault bought Dior and proceeded to make enormous changes to the structure of the business, and eventually he replaced Bohan with Gianfranco Ferré as the new style director in 1989. Although some of the changes were drastic, they were mostly behind the scenes, and the world did not see any significant changes to the Dior style. Even though the artistic director is now ever-changing, the House of Dior continues to produce exceptionally designed pieces, accessories, and scents that have stayed true to Christian Dior's original concept. As you know, to this day, Dior is considered to be one of the leading luxury fashion brands on the planet, and with billions of dollars in revenue every year, it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Hungry for another fascinating business story? Click on the following video to hear the crazy story about the orphan boy who invented Rolex.